Apologies all, you'll have to forgive the impromptu use of my phone. My microphone is now well and truly knackered. That is exactly what these boys' videos have been doing to not just me, but my poor innocent equipment. But we are now on issue 48 of 72. Proper preparation and planning, issues 48 through 51. Now that things have escalated to the point of no return, the boys have decided that the Seven need to be their next target. This is where the episodic nature of the comic is pretty much abandoned and we focus entirely on the main storyline.
They have to plan things out, strategize, and figure out a weakness to exploit. This creates a lot more tension.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? They sit down and go over the mysterious incident with Colonel Mallerie's granddaughters and what went wrong then. And I didn't mention this before, but the boys have pictures of Homelander doing some truly heinous shit, even by the standards of this comic, like literally eating a baby. Frenchie points out that when they have interacted with him, he is composed, discreet, and patient, which doesn't suggest the behaviour of the man in the photos. And again, another little thing that I really like about this comic is just the normality, the small interactions between the boys that show them, their characters, and their relationships with each other. In this particular one, nagging Butcher about throwing darts at the wall because they're in a historical building. Additionally, more plot relevantly, they start arguing over Huey, who didn't show up for work, and we see that is still very mad at Butcher for what he did in the Innocence arc with Mal Chemical. Again, that's something that I will be saving for a different segment. Frenchie is also feeling that the boys' team is getting to a place that he feels is too dark for the female and poses the idea that they should leave, which she, probably due to the stability being on the team gives her, declines. Things go from bad to worse when Monkey, the Weasley government man who liaises with the boys, comes in with a shit-eating grin on his face, telling them that Rayner is leaving the CIA to go into politics and will be putting him up for the job. And he is more than eager to make the boys, in specific Billy's life, as hard as he possibly can. On the side of Vought, we see Stillwell is showing around that Vought employee that he was schmoozing in the previous issues. And while she is incredibly plot relevant, I'm not even going to bother telling you her name because who she is doesn't matter. Her, what she represents, and her ultimate fate could be anyone. So in my opinion, it's incredibly thematically appropriate and almost poetic for her to remain nameless. Another complaint I don't get in regards to the comic is the twist ending, but we'll really be delving into that when we go into Homelander's character and how the show just, again, completely missed the point in an attempt to make a more likable character, which I've said before I believe is a mistake. But this is where we get to see some real character set up for him in the comic as he tries to convince himself that other people are nothing but toys for his amusement, as he has been led to believe he is a god his whole life, so why should he feel bad if he hurts them? I tell a lie, this isn't the first time we've seen him struggling over this. We have had small hints of it, and also small hints of him slowly losing his grip on both himself, his temper, and his identity throughout most of the comic. This is when it really starts to hit the ground running. I think it's just a matter of him attempting to convince himself that he can do this stuff and he should feel nothing. We are also finally introduced to the elusive Greg Mallerie and are treated to the story of what Lamplighter did to his granddaughters. I've said multiple times before, and I will reiterate again, this is not a scrappy anti-hero underdog going after mega bad guy story. A very typical superhero story.
In the TV show, the boys are ordinary people, which means that they're always the underdogs when they're going up against a superhero.
This is a fairly deep and complex commentary on the contentious, mutually beneficial yet mutually hostile relationship between governments and corporations. Those two massive factions that run our society, and the fact that there is no one person in the seat of power. It is a tangled, messy, incredibly dangerous web that no one person will ever be able to take down. Due to 9/11 and the soup's part in it, Mallerie is able to get significant concessions in order for the government to both let it slide and keep it covered up. This is what the legend was relaying to Huey back in the storyline I'll Tell You No Lie GI. Because Ennis, as a writer, actually remembers the things that he writes and remembers that actions have consequences.
Oh.
Lamplighter is not happy about any of this because he thinks he's the shit and burns Mallerie's granddaughters alive. And this just occurred to me right now, but I think this is a little foreshadowing / microcosm of what is going to happen to Homelander later on. As I said, this is an incredibly powerfully tangled web with no one person at the head of it. And that is the reason why superpowered people, in Ennis's view, would not actually even be powerful as power truly is. And it's the idea of thinking you're special, thinking that you are invincible, because maybe you've gotten away with a lot of shit in the past, so you feel like nothing can touch you, but if you do push too far, if you think you are the shit and you go too far, then you are as expendable as anyone else. More and more, we are seeing the man Billy truly is, as not only is he unconcerned about the deaths of 12-year-old children, but seems to see it as a test of Mallerie's will and leadership, which, while horrendous in general, in the face of Mallerie, he actually has something of a point, because this is a man who took Billy in his state of grief and used it to mold him into a weapon he could fire at his enemies. And now he's losing control of the thing he helped to create. He also doesn't have a leg to stand on berating Billy for being so heartless when he was the one who was completely unconcerned with the man, only what he could turn him into and how useful a creature that would be. Vought and Homelander in particular are very keen to avoid a confrontation about this, so as a peace offering, they are delivered Lamplighter, who Mallerie shoots to death for all the good it does. We also do see some really interesting character depth with Maeve, who comes to inform them of the situation, and I don't think I could put it any better than this dialogue. You know why I'm not worried about the Seven asking where I am tonight? Because they think I'm a drunk. Because I am a drunk. I come and go all the time. That fucking plane? The one the passengers knew they weren't getting out, they tried to keep me aboard, to drag me down into the dark with them. Hands, just dozens of hands hanging on to me. I had to fly through the crowd at the door. And when I was out, they were all over me like paste. So now I drink. All the time. And I'm going to be drinking even more if that son of a bitch is dropping in on us, and I have to look in his eyes. You're talking about us like we're some kind of ultimate enemy, but you ought to be talking about him. I hate this shit. I just want to live inside myself. This is where the subversive take on superheroes, no matter what you may think of Ennis's opinion on them, really shines. The whole point is that if people got powers, they would not become symbols of hope and victory. The comic takes a stance, again, whether you agree with it or not, that there are fundamental weaknesses in people that superpowers don't really affect at all. It just gives them the ability to indulge their worst impulses and the position to think they are above it. Though the latter may not be true for the more self-aware ones like Maeve. Powers don't encourage people to be better. It allows them to be their worst selves, and many of the ones that might have otherwise been decent people are miserable because life has given them no reason to be better. And I just noticed this, but Huey, while having superpowers, rarely ever uses them. Same with Annie. In fact, I had basically forgot that Huey even had Compound V in his veins. And Annie, though she is part of the superhero community, her powers are the least of who she is because she refused to adapt for the worst or become apathetic, so she leaves the power behind to live with Huey and doesn't use it. As I said before, there are 3 choices in this world. You can either assimilate, leave, or die. She doesn't try to use her powers to do good because powers are no good. Bad Soups fighting good Soups in the show just torpedoes any chance at genre subversion that they might have otherwise had. And again, another repetition of a point is that the show is not the genre subversion that people think it is. It is actually outrageously typical of the genre. Also, this incident is what led to the original suspension of the boys, as Vought makes a show of strength with a brutal slaughter and then it calls a ceasefire. They will temporarily stop trying to get their heroes into the military and work on the concept, and the boys will back down. Another stalemate in this back and forth, never-ending, mutually assured destruction. And this all connects back to the present where, as I said, the boys have decided that due to how things have escalated, the Seven need to be their next target. And we now know that, again, these two massively powerful factions that work with each other, against each other, scratch each other's backs and stab each other's backs, sometimes all at once, have basically been in this stalemate ever since. But due to the escalation of tensions and all the pieces that have either fallen into place or happenstance ended up in these places, this Cold War between these two factions is about to come to an end. So back in the present, Billy goes to Raynor and informs her that a Soup coup is likely coming, but Vogelbaum found a way that Soups could be directly targeted, and that has been worked on since his death. They talk about her deeds in Afghanistan, which again, this character is really so interesting. I am just really pissed off at how much they flanderized her and what she represents in the show. It's not the thing I'm most pissed about with the show, but it's definitely up there. And that directly relates to my amusement and frustration of how the show decided to portray the government. Oh, and Butcher gets one over on Monkey and takes back control of the boys' team, making the man his bitch again. And no, that is not a play on words for anything else that happens in this issue. And next, we actually finally get to sit down with Colonel Mallerie and find out exactly how this all started.